Welcome to our topic on leveling up as a leader by maximizing your meeting effectiveness. My name is Mandy. I'm the engagement champion at CoreClarity, and I'm excited about today's topic and its relevance to the changes that we've been experiencing over the last year. I'm even more excited about who I get to talk with about it. So today I have the great pleasure of speaking to Kelly Jasen, who is our expert of the day on leadership. Kelly has 2 decades of experience advising clients from franchisees and corporations to nonprofits and federal government agencies, including multiple years in Federal Aviation Administration engagements. She brings an in-depth, academically sound approach with expertise in leadership development, strong teams, and strategic planning. Kelly has a master's in organizational leadership from Gonzaga University and is certified in servant leadership, team building, and as a CoreClarity facilitator. Her requested deliverables frequently include leading team dynamics workshops, facilitation, executive advising and coaching, conducting organizational assessments, and leader development. She has a passion for developing leaders who can transform their culture and their organizations. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, Mandy. It's good to be here.
I have known you for a very, very long time, and I happen to know that you have gone from someone who despises meetings to someone who has become very passionate about meetings. So that's really where we're going to dig in today, and that's where you're going to help us dig in. So would you mind just kind of starting us off by telling us why the big shift around meetings?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I have always hated meetings. Even my own meetings that I'm leading and in charge of, I still hate it. And, you know, a year ago, if you had told me, hey, you're going to be sitting here talking passionately about meetings, I would have told you you are wrong and crazy. And there's a few things that change that. Some of that is kind of the COVID environment and shifting to so much virtual work. A lot of it is research. I learned that we spend over a third of our time in meetings. So when you think about organizations where you're not out in the field touching things, doing things, about a third of our time is in meetings. The higher up you go in management, a lot of times the greater that percentage is. And then with COVID, that percentage has increased even higher than that for a lot of people. But meanwhile, about 50% of meetings are considered ineffective. So a third of our time's in meetings and half of those are ineffective. That started getting me more passionate about it doesn't have to be that way. We can change this.
Absolutely. I can't wait to dive in. Tell us more.
Thank you. So we're going to talk about that today. And it's a great time to change our meetings because it's the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the year, people already are expecting change. They're already anticipating it. We have our New Year's resolutions, our word for the year. Some people do dry January and it becomes wet January by January 4th. That's okay. I'm not going to ask you to show your hands. That we're expecting change at the beginning of the year. So it's a great time to make changes. And so we want to do that. Beyond that, we want to show up differently as leaders and even as participants, because we are showing who we are when we're in these meetings. You know, a lot of people surveyed in research say, hey, meetings just keep me from getting work done, or I use that time to do other work kind of discreetly while no one's looking. People have said that these meetings are just times where we miss chances to collaborate, where we miss chances to provide clarity. So let's change that. You know, 75% of people don't receive training on how to do meetings and yet are told that they need to do meetings. So this is kind of this, how do we do these meetings in a different way to be effective, especially since we spend so much time in them?
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't get training on how to run meetings typically. That's not something that we've had to have. And I think over the last year, like you said, it's not just even, we've always had meetings, but how much it's changed because of COVID and how much virtual has changed the way that we lead meetings is really interesting. I know you're going to help us kind of dive into that as it pertains to leadership as well.
Yeah, I think, Nancy, you kind of just already started hitting on something there. that meetings are more and more showing who we are. Each of us as leaders and as people, we have a brand, just like companies out there have brands, and we hear the company name or we see the commercials and we think something about that company. As people, we have brands too. And prior to COVID, we kind of got known, our brand, if you will, as leaders got known in several ways. It's who we were in the hallway, at happy hour, during lunch or coffee. It's who we were when we were walking through the hallway and collaborating at someone's desk or in their office or telling jokes. There were work events. There were all these different ways that people came to know us and experience our leadership in different ways.
Mhm.
With so much moving virtual, and even as we look at 2021 and it's predicted that some things will be back in person, it's highly likely that that's still going to be somewhat hybrid, virtual and people in person. So more and more, who we are as leaders gets known by how we show up in meetings. Meetings we're leading and meetings we're participating in. That is doing a lot to kind of determine what our brand is and how people come to know us.
Yeah.
So we want to take that into the meetings and be really aware of that. You know, the meetings that we have tells us who our priorities are. It tells us what our priorities are. It shows who we are as leaders. There's a lot in meetings that tells us about how we lead our teams and how we work together as teams. I was reading an article and the person said, I can tell you everything I need to know about you as a leader and you as an organization by looking at your calendar and how you spend your time in meetings. And I thought, that's so arrogant. Like, I would never presume to know everything by just looking at someone's calendar.
Right.
But there are things that are revealed to us by how we spend that time in meetings.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about, how different people are. We're all different. And so for some, it's going to be about, being able to connect. And then, there's some that for some, it's just going to be getting straight to business. There's such a variety there. And that can be difficult to appease everyone.
Yeah. And Nancy, I think a lot of that has to do with our talents. So how we are hardwired and what our talents are is going to naturally be how we participate in meetings and how we lead meetings. And there's really good things about that. We just also have to be aware that other people have talents too in that meeting and diving into those. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah. I was just going to say, let me have you pause there for just a quick second for anybody who's watching who may not understand this word that Kelly just used, which is talent. I want to make sure everybody kind of knows what we're talking about here, because Kelly's going to talk about this as we progress in this conversation. In our line of work at CoreClarity, we talk a lot about talents. The word talents, the definition of a talent is just naturally recurring thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that can be productively applied. Everyone has an internal operating system. We all know that term. We all use technology. We all know about iOSs. We all know. That's the same with people. We all humans have an internal operating system. The tricky part about that is that there's millions of different operating systems when it comes to humans. And that can be so tricky. Yeah. But if we understand it, it can be a clue in. And I think that's where you're going with this, is that, a lot of times how we run meetings depends upon our talents. What's important to us, what is our operating system? What do we value? What comes naturally to us?
Yes. Yeah. So well said. It really does. So we want to look at what's our own operating system and how does that benefit us in meetings? And then where is it that sometimes we need to consider someone else's to be effective? We have this at WBB. We talk about everybody has this innate desire to belong, contribute, and make a difference. So every time we have a meeting, and think of a meeting as anytime it's more than me in the room, virtually or in person. Whenever we have a meeting, we have an opportunity there to make sure people feel like they belong. Hey, you are wanted here. You are valued. This is a safe place for you to contribute and grow and provide things. People want to contribute. They want to use who they are and what they know and their expertise and skills to contribute to the project, the topic. And that's in meetings. People don't come wanting to disengage and sit back and be like, this has nothing to do with me. People want to contribute, but a lot of times in meetings, they have no idea how, and they want to make a difference. They want to use their uniqueness to make a difference. And so let's change our meetings to do that. And some of that is first in doing meeting audits. which I'm sure everyone heard, oh, meeting audits, and thought, that sounds amazing. I want to do that. I'm not going to say it's not painful. I think anything with the word audit is a little painful. Maybe not
Just
if you're
gonna
an
say,
auditor.
the words suggest a little bit of pain, but that's okay. That's growth. That's good.
Exactly. And we only grow when we are uncomfortable. Discomfort is required for growth. So I'm going to ask you to audit your meetings. I want you to look at all the meetings on your calendar. What do you have daily, weekly, monthly? How often are those held? How long are they? And is that effective? Are there meetings that you are going to or you are holding that you're just doing because it's the way it's always been done? Do they have value? If not, maybe you drop them, or maybe you change the frequency of them. How long are your meetings? If you could just make your 60-minute meetings 50 minutes, you're going to re-engage your team in new ways, especially virtually. People are going from one Zoom call to another, to another, to another, sometimes having 10 or 11 meetings in a day via Zoom. They have no time to reset between things, no time to shift their mind, to review documentation, to prepare for the next meeting. So even if we drop meetings by a couple minutes early, 10 minutes early, whatever length we schedule our meeting for, we are more likely to fill that time even when it's not needed. So where can we change how we schedule our meetings to make them shorter? Where can we break up meetings? A lot of times, and you and I have talked about this before, Mandy, I think that we try and put all of a meeting in one meeting.
Yes.
So in this meeting, we're going to get a status update from everybody. We're going to find out what everyone's priorities are. We're going to talk about what our priorities are as a team. We're going to figure out what our vision is for the next year. We're going to strategize on something that's really important. But first, we're going to brainstorm on it, and then we're going to fight about it, and then we're going to make a decision. But we ran out of time to make a decision. We can't do that all in one meeting.
Right.
And so also looking at your meetings, part of this audit is to say, hey, where do we change this to just a status update check-in? 1 minute per person, that's all you get. We're just checking in with what are you working on today?
Yeah.
Where can we change a meeting to just 1 or 2 key topics that we really need to strategize, we really need to get deep? Where is a meeting just for information? It's more of a briefing, and that's all we have on the agenda. So we want to audit and see where we can make those changes. Death by Meeting by Patrick Lencioni is a great resource for that, to look at that, and then to look at where can you block time in your calendar to do deep work, to really focus on tasks instead of meetings, to really prepare for a future meeting where you want to be able to contribute. Where in your calendar do you have open hours where people can just come and see you and talk to you? And not schedule something on your books, but just know that, hey, you're available. And having conversations with the team. So do this individually, but also have team conversation around how we can make some changes to our schedule. That can make a huge difference.
I'd read an article here recently about, stacking meetings and like creating maybe your mornings where it's back-to-back meetings, and then it allows you the afternoon to have a chunk where you're just working. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting concept, but I keep hearing people say, I don't have time to even have any processing time when one meeting ends and then another one begins. And so I think what you're saying is just so valuable that we have to be looking at not only, what works for us, but also being mindful of how everybody is kind of operating and what they need, what their needs are. And I know it's difficult to make everybody happy. So I think you had mentioned to me, in a previous conversation, it's starting the conversations. That's what's important.
Yes.
Having those conversations with your teams about what does work for everybody, and then going from there.
So you just said something so important, and I know not everyone's going to love this, but it is not about what changes can we make that makes everybody happy. It is about what changes can we make that makes us more effective.
Yeah.
And those are not always the same thing, because for all of us to be happy isn't going to happen, because the same things that work for me aren't going to always work for you. So as team discussions are around, where do we get more effective? Where do we free up time in people's schedules? If someone doesn't really need to be at that meeting, don't make them be at that meeting. If you're worried, so many times we include somebody because we think, well, what if this topic comes up? So maybe you say to that person, hey, Mandy, nothing on the agenda today, that you look at, you might want to be there for. But if this were to come up, could you
Mm,
hop into the meeting if we need you?
yeah.
So to think about changes like that too, and do that audit and make some changes. And some of this is also holding your own boundaries.
I was just going to say,
So
I
as
see
a
a boundary
team,
theme in here. There's a definite
yes,
boundary theme. For those of us who are chatty Cathys, we would spend 15 out of the 60 minutes catching up. And then you have, if it really eats
yeah,
into the time over time, it eats into the productivity. So I loved what you were
yes,
saying about let's do 1 minute updates. Let's not skip it. Let's do 1 minute. But we have to keep boundaries. And I don't know, I'm not great at keeping boundaries. So maybe it's assigning someone like, okay, guys, I'm not good at boundaries. Can someone please take this for me? Because I need to be held accountable. And that's important to
yeah.
the effectiveness of the team.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of what makes meetings matter. That's why people see meetings as ineffective. I'm disengaged. We never get to what I wanted to talk about. I don't know why I'm here. So we want to build time from the beginning as we're thinking about our meetings. Let's think about them differently from the very beginning. How do we have some relational collaborative time built in?
Mhm.
How do we have time to cover what we need to cover? How do we tap into different talents like you were talking about earlier? And so, if we have a lot of relational and connecting talents, we might be really good at that, making sure we connect with people. But you've got people who have achiever or responsibility that are going, hey, when are we going to get these things done? When are we going to get these off the list?
Right.
So, having some discipline in there, whether that's you as the leader or you have a participant who's really good at it, who says, hey, this is what we're here to talk about. So we're gonna make sure we stay in that lane
Yeah.
in order to protect everybody's time. And that goes into for any meeting, why? Why are you having this meeting? What is the purpose of it? And if the purpose of it is we've always had it, I'm gonna say that's not a great purpose.
Yeah.
It's not. People's time is valuable. People are valuable. The more that they can spend their time contributing to the organization, the more engaged they're going to be, the better team you're going to have. So make your meetings matter by being very clear on why we're having this meeting. What is it to accomplish? That could sometimes just be team building and fun. That's okay if everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Choose which platform works and know what platform is best. One-on-ones may not always be best by Zoom. Sometimes people have better conversations by phone. Know how you work as a team and take time to figure out what time of day, what day of the week works better. Doing some of that calendaring together to figure those things out, what needs to be on the agenda. And then this is huge for me. And if anyone's been in a meeting with me, I've probably talked about this. We're going to have, here's why we're having the meeting. Here's how we're having it. Here's what's on the agenda and why it's on the agenda. Here's what we need to get out of it.
Mhm.
So many times there's things on the agenda, but it doesn't tell anybody why is this on the agenda and what's the goal here. And so I don't know if I'm in a meeting, if that's on there because we're going to talk about it and you want to hear my ideas, or there was a decision made and you're just informing me, or we need to change something because of this. And so these agenda topics come up. I think I'm engaging by giving you all of these ideas, or I'm showing I'm interested by asking all of these questions. And you're going, what is wrong with you? This is not up for debate here.
Yeah.
So I'm frustrated because I think I'm doing great being engaged.
Yeah.
You're frustrated because you're like, why do you keep interrupting with all these questions? So we want to let people know here's what to expect. Here's what's on the agenda. Here's why. And if there's things that people need to know ahead of time and read,
Mhm.
give it to them ahead of time. I did an offsite with the team 3 months in a row. There was read aheads. The agenda item would come up. Over half the room wouldn't have read it. So they would stop and they would take time to read it in the meeting. And then there'd be no time to discuss it. And the topic would move to the next meeting. And they did that 3 different times in a row. And so finally I said, hey guys, is this effective for you?
Mhm.
Either say, hey, no one's going to read this ahead of time, so we're going to make time for it in the agenda,
Mhm.
or don't put it on the agenda until people have had time to read it.
Yeah.
Because you're just wasting time and you just frustrate people. And then know the more participants you have in a meeting, the less effective it gets. So
Okay.
you want
Good to know.
to make
That's
sure that,
great. That's a good nugget. It's a good nugget. And all the more
yeah,
reason to do the kind of the purpose of the meeting. I do have a quick question for you before you go on though. Who would you recommend then is the driver of kind of creating that purpose of the meeting? Is it whoever called the meeting? Are you kind of asking multiple people, or who drives that?
So I think there's a lot of ways meetings happen. We are already in a meeting and we realize we need to go deeper on this. So that becomes a separate meeting, and that's the why. Sometimes it's the manager of the team, the manager or the task lead of a project. And so whoever is scheduling that meeting, whoever's saying like, hey, we need to have this meeting, you need to be clear on your why. If you're attending the meeting, I would encourage you to ask, what's the why for the meeting?
Okay.
Why are we having this meeting? What's the purpose? Because that's going to help you know how to engage
and how to
contribute
with
there.
That with every meeting, you said?
Yeah.
You do. Okay.
So I would say when we are opening meetings, you want to make them count. So you're going to open it with, hey, here's why we're meeting. Here's what the agenda is. Here's why we're talking about each of these items. And we're not going into depth. This is very quick. We are talking about the budget because we're going to figure out where we're going to cut 10%. We are talking about our yearly annual picnic because we're going to figure out where it's going to be held this year. Okay, so that's very quick, but we're going to take time to open the meeting with that. I also love creating some sort of people map or participant map in a meeting. Who all is in this meeting? And I will literally write it down. I do not use Zoom windows because they change as people come on and off, and you'll lose your place. And then I will kind of use that as a gauge of how much am I hearing from people? Am I hearing from everybody? Is everybody here that I need to have here? And this happens especially when we're now on Zoom and Teams, where we don't have everyone in front of us to do that. Some sort of opening the room with some team building and trust. We don't trust people we don't know. My colleague Trevor Braun says this all the time, and the more he says it, the more I believe it. So it's working, Trevor. We don't trust people we don't know. So even in meetings and in work settings, we want to have some element of getting to know each other. One, for people who have those talents that are around connecting and relating, that's going to really engage them from the very beginning. From people who take a little bit more time to warm up, it gives them a little bit of time to kind of build into the meeting. And it can be quick. Hey, what's a book you could read over and over? It can be more time consuming. Hey, let's see how many things we can find in common that all of us share in common together. So you can adapt it to how much time you have, but something that just brings the team together and builds some trust. If there's ground rules that you normally follow as a team, quickly go over those. Here's how this meeting works. Here's what to expect. Open the floor. Is there anything that we missed? Is there anything we need to talk about that, we have this agenda, we worked hard on it, but sometimes something comes up that we want to know that we need to talk about that instead. And then in that meeting to figure out, are there different roles people can play? If you have somebody who's really good with discipline and focus and staying on task, maybe they're in charge of the agenda. If you have somebody who's very detailed and likes kind of the taking notes role, maybe they take the notes, and maybe those things rotate a little bit. But kind of think about how to use people and keep them going from the very beginning of the meeting.
That's great. What was the term you used about the people mapping? Was it people mapping?
Some people call it people map. Some call it participant map.
Participant map.
If you're familiar with CoreClarity, if I ever have a team that that we have all their strengths for, I will use my CoreClarity group chart for this, for those of you who are familiar with it, because then I also have a reminder of their talents.
I love that. I love that. I was just going to say something to that effect, where it's interesting because there are some people who are internal processors, and they're going to need time to think. It doesn't mean that they're not engaged. It just means that they're processing. And so unless you call on them or, have them, they're not going to probably share their thoughts without you drawing that out of them. And they're obviously such an important part of the team, but may not be the one that's most heard because they're not naturally going to speak up. So I love that idea of people map. That's great.
I think that goes right into how you sustain engagement. You have to work hard to engage people in a meeting, and that is a change for most of us. But all of us at some point have disengaged from a meeting. So whether you are leading it or you are participating in it, we all can contribute to having better meetings. And some of that is by calling on people. it is by taking that participant map and saying, hey, Mandy, I haven't heard from you. What do you think on this? Or we will say, hey, I want to hear from everyone on this. And then 3 people talk, and then we close it out and move on. So you didn't really want to hear from everybody. So now you've just taken a hit on trust. People aren't going to trust you as much, and it's very unintentional. But when we keep track of who's in the meeting, we can literally call on people by name. Hey, I want to hear from everybody on this and what you're thinking. So I'm just going to go through and call on each of you. So be ready to come off mute and share your thoughts.
Yeah.
And that gives people time to know, hey, okay, I have something to, contribute, and I'm going to get called on. And I will tell you, if you're not used to doing this and your people aren't used to it, it's going to be awkward initially. That's okay. They will get used to it.
Yeah.
Some other things we can do to keep the meeting going and keep people engaged is to continually summarize progress. Hey, here's what we've talked about so far. Here's what's been decided. Here's what actions are going to be taken. That does a couple things. We know from research that about 1/3 of the population has one of 2 talents, either achievers who are very motivated by getting things done, or responsibility. I want to know what I'm responsible for, who owns what, and I want to make sure that gets done. That's important to me. Well, when we summarize progress, we are naturally engaging at least 1/3 of the people in the room, just statistically, by saying, hey, here's where we are so far. That also ensures that if we have something wrong, we have a natural checkpoint for someone to say, oh, hey, actually, I'm not the one doing that. Mandy has that. Oh, we decided this. I thought we were doing that. So we want to do that. We also can let people know what's next. And this is great, especially with a break. If you've gone about an hour, give a 5-minute up and down. If you're going a few hours, give people those 15-minute breaks. It can feel like we can't say, oh, I can't give up that much time. And we do these things of like, okay, well, if you need to take a break, just go ahead and excuse yourself. We're going to keep going. But research shows that when we give people a true break, they are better for it. So say, hey, take 5 minutes. When we get back, we're going to talk about this. Check in with people. You can use polling to make sure you're hearing from everybody. Zoom and a lot of platforms have polling. Set goals. Hey, in the next 10 minutes, let's try and get this done. Let's finish up this conversation. Use silence sometimes. If you want to hear from everybody, then put the question on the table and then just be quiet.
Oh.
I know that was excruciating. I did not freeze. Right? It kills us, but just be quiet and then ask questions. 90% of people admit to daydreaming in meetings. 73% of people use it to do other work. So the more we can do these things to engage people, the better it's going to be.
Absolutely.
We keep it going, even if it feels a little weird. And then we want to end as strong as we began. We want to save time at the end of those meetings, that last 10 minutes, 5 minutes, just to review what was decided, what we went over in the meeting, what's next. Do we need to meet again? When? So we want to think about that. We want to make sure we're asking for feedback. And if you are in a good meeting, share that feedback. Tell people what they did well, what you've appreciated about the meeting, so that they know to do it again. Whether you're leading the meeting, yes. And whether you're leading the meeting or you're participating, change how you contribute. Even if it feels awkward, go for it. And then look for things. Where can you change the rules? Where can you change the frequency or the platform? Where can you make changes that truly prioritize the priorities and help you show up differently as a leader in those meetings, whether it's your meeting or someone else's? We want to prepare not just for the agenda of the meeting, but we want to prepare for who's in that meeting. So what are their talents? How are they wired? What are they looking for in that meeting? Prepare for that and prepare for yourself. How do I want to show up in this meeting? What do I want my brand to be in this meeting? Where can I be more effective? And just start somewhere.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I love the accountability on both sides. I love the accountability on, you're planning it. That keeps you on track during the meeting, but it also keeps you on track to prepare for the meeting and not waste time. Yes. I love the accountability of these tips. Excellent. I know we only have a couple minutes left here, and I know we're supposed to be wrapping up early because that was one of your tips. But anyway,
this doesn't count. I'm just a teacher. It doesn't count.
All right. So, any last thoughts or tips that you want to leave people with before we tell everyone how they can get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
Yeah. So I'd say just do something. Start somewhere. Just try changing one meeting or one thing on your calendar and go from there. Progress, not perfection. We want to make progress. And I will be, for the next month or so, I will be sharing a tip a day on my LinkedIn account on how to make your meetings more effective. So feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. You can also email me. If you prefer phone, you can give me a call.
Okay.
And I think my email address is on the screen. That's also going to be in the notes section. So feel free to reach out via email. We can schedule a call. We can talk. I love it. And I love facilitating meetings and helping people be effective. So I am here to help.
Information is there. You can certainly visit CoreClarity's Facebook page as well to get information on Kelly. And Kelly, thank you so much. You had so many great nuggets in that 30 minutes worth of conversation about making meetings effective. We appreciate you coming, and thank you so much.